Hi, this is Tasheena.
And this is Jonathan.
And this is We Watch What We Watch, a podcast where a married couple talk about movies and TV.
And today we are talking about Deadpool and Wolverine. I'm not looking to make movies and shows for an audience of 7 cool kids in the corner. I build stories for populist entertainment. That is director Shawn Levy.
Oh, let's put a pin on Shawn Levy.
Put a pin on that.
We'll put a pin on that. Before we move on, go to Letterboxd. And of course, we have all of our extremes on Letterboxd for this movie, which is best comedy ever to the death of cinema. With thirst for Hugh Jackman, of course, mixed in there.
Deserved.
Yes, it is. It is very much deserved. There was one entry, though, that really spoke to me, and it was from Finch Sam, and it was a lot. Yep. It was a lot. And I'm like, you know what? I think that sums up my experience pretty well.
Yeah, so let's see. Getting into this, I think from the get-go, my suspicion is that we have different opinions on this movie.
Oh, really?
Yes.
I have to say, it's very mixed, very back and forth. I think when I first ended, I was very negative. Probably because by the end of the movie, I was just done. I was ready to leave. This movie had no business being 2 hours and 8 minutes.
The only thing it was missing was the heavy blooms of the Oppenheimer soundtrack blaring in your head the entire time.
Yeah. But looking back, we'll get into it. There are parts that I do like. It's just it ended on such a negative place for me. I kind of had probably a negative state of mind until I had some time away. I was able to kind of process some things. And my conclusion is it's okay.
Gotcha. So, yeah, for me, it was sort of literally the opposite. Going into the movie, my expectations were pretty mid. Like, okay, it looks fun. I suspected that they put everything good in the trailers, which they did not, to their credit.
Yes.
Because they were hiding about 10,000 different spoilers.
Yeah.
So my experience of watching it, I enjoyed it way more than I expected.
Okay.
I was laughing at a lot of stuff. One moment in particular really got me. And I had a really great first viewing experience.
Okay.
It was a lot. It did suffer from many of the Marvel things, and we'll get into that. But my at least initial impression was pretty good. And it's only been in hindsight, the more I think about it, the more I've been unsure about where I would actually put this movie. And that comes down to if I would watch it again.
That's where I'm at right now. I've gone over and over in my head. I'm like, would I rewatch this? And I still don't know. There's definitely parts I would rewatch. But if, like, say, home video or something like that. Home video sounds so old. I'd probably...
Okay, boomer.
I know. I'd probably fast forward to, like, certain parts. I don't see me sitting down and watching the whole thing again.
Yeah, and it's interesting that we're both at that spot considering our different reactions to it, where you had more of a negative reaction watching it, and you're sitting there questioning, yeah, would I put myself through this again? I had a very positive reaction watching it, but in some ways I feel like I'm good. I'm done.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so I think that's interesting. This movie. So, I mean, it's very Deadpool.
It's very Deadpool.
So if you liked the previous movies, it's a lot of more of the same. I think you'll probably have at least a decent time with this one, is my expectation.
I imagine so, yeah.
And if you didn't like the other Deadpools, I don't think this is going to change his mind. He takes all of his things to 11. So assuming you've bought into the shtick,
yes,
I think you're set up well for this movie. The overall conceit of this movie is taking the multiverse and making fun of it, right?
Yes.
Which is very much in line with what Deadpool has always been about with fourth wall breaking, but taken to an extreme and made almost a commentary on the current multiverse trends. It doesn't really go that far into it.
Mm-hmm.
But I thought that lent very well to the character, the structure, what we've come to expect from the series. So it was, I think, a smart decision to tackle this story with Deadpool specifically. So much so that I think it was very cleverly able to take many of the things I actively dislike about a lot of not just superhero movies or multiverse movies, but legacy franchises in general that depends so much on point and clap moments to artificially boost the appeal of the film.
My fear, though, is of course Hollywood always learns the wrong lessons, and this made a ton of money. And I'm like, oh no, we're going to get so many point and clap movies now.
Can we have more point and clap movies than we already have? We already have a lot.
We already have a lot. They're just going to double down even more.
Probably.
Because there is some point and clap elements of this movie, but there's also some cameos that I feel like thankfully went beyond that. And that's also one of the reasons why I don't know if I would revisit, because
exactly
it was built on those cameos.
And I think that's where I'm at right now is I can't decide if it would at all be the same experience watching it a second time. So which means I probably should watch it a second time just to find out. But my suspicion is that it was so built on those surprise moments that watching a second time, it's not going to feel the same. And not in a way like a movie where the twist, a Prestige or a Sixth Sense, where the twist makes you appreciate it more in hindsight. I don't feel like there are any of those elements here.
I don't think so.
I don't think there's anything like, oh, this is there's no foreshadowing. There's no, it makes it make more sense on a rewatch. They are just at face value.
Correct. Try to veer into more positive aspects, so I'm not completely negative. I was laughing. There's definitely a lot of good bits in here. I also think a lot of the writing was elevated by the actors. I feel like there's some rough stuff in here, and like Hugh Jackman was amazing. He didn't have to go that hard for this movie, And Matthew McFadden, I really like. I think it's Emma Corrin who played Cassandra Nova. Like, these are all people who really were trying to give their A game, even if the material was not up to that level. And I think they really helped. Honestly, a lot of this movie to me felt cheap. The look of it, the direction. After a while, that stops being cute. Like, it really, that wasn't for me. So I have at least these elements where the actors are trying to give me something. And I really appreciate that, because those were the best parts to me. I think the part where they have the Deadpool and Wolverine have the fight in the van, the Odyssey, to when they leave the void, is probably my favorite section. Like, if I were to go and revisit, it would probably just be that section. Also because a certain cameo is highlighted in that section. So what? That's probably like 45 minutes, maybe an hour at most. So it's not like I think the whole thing is terrible. I don't think this is the end of cinema. I know Hollywood's going to learn some bad lessons, but he did have a good time. Just especially that third act.
I think I could tell you in real. I think I could tell. I could observe you in real time, getting more and more like overwhelmed by just the fire hose of, I'm gonna call it, content.
Yeah.
That is being blasted at you.
Yes. Yeah, the third act, there was definitely some moments that I liked, but overall, that third act, whew, I was ready. When I found out how much more time we still had left when they left the void, and I'm like, oh my goodness, we still have so much more time. I was like, oh no.
I was actually surprised how much time they spent in the void. That's really the meat of the movie. I was actually glad they spent that much time there, because I was a little worried this movie was going to be one of those where it was all over the place, kept bouncing around more and more locations, never had a chance to breathe. But I'm glad they stuck with that and made that sort of the core through line. But yeah, in terms of positives, I mean, yeah, I didn't have an issue with the third act. I actually appreciated some of the choices they made there, but like I said, I was still on the wave and riding it by that point, and I think you were off. And once you're off the wave,
off is very hard to stay with us.
Then once you're off the wave, everything that's actually a positive for those still on it is a negative for everyone else, and it just drives you deeper and deeper underwater.
Flames on the side.
It's on my face.
That's definitely how I felt towards the end. I've seen people on Twitter totally trashing this movie. I definitely get where they're coming from. I get the exhaustion.
I'm not going to say the movie's a masterpiece and you're an idiot if you didn't at least like it a little bit, but I was sort of set up because I had heard about those 1-star reviews. I'm like, oh man, this is going to be unfunny, pile of meandering trash. And it wasn't. It definitely was not that.
I'm like, okay, maybe I just have a terrible sense of humor then. I laughed.
Right?
But it's interesting. There were some people who gave out low reviews, even in their reviews, saying, I laughed, but that doesn't mean I think this is a worthwhile movie.
Yeah, so that's sort of what I have been struggling with is I laughed a lot. I had a great time, but I don't feel like the movie holds up to a lot of post-watch analysis. Is that okay or not?
I don't know.
I think for populist entertainment, as the director puts it, that is probably all you're after, to give you an experience.
Mm-hmm.
If I go to, I don't know, a football game, or I go out and do any other kind of like experience-based entertainment, I'm not analyzing it after the fact. Well, the ratio of time spent watching actual gameplay versus me listening to, ads and drinking beer and eating a hot dog weren't exactly optimal. It's like, no, you had a good experience and you leave it at that. So in that sense, it did accomplish what it set out to do.
Yeah, I mean, my parents came with us and they were laughing, and I
was surprised at that.
And I have no idea how much they knew what was going on. I think my mom has barely seen any of the MCU movies, maybe definitely the earlier ones, but I don't know how much of like the recent ones she's seen, especially Loki. Right. I don't know what she thought about the TVA and all that stuff.
Who are these people?
She asked me a couple questions afterwards, but not nearly as many as I thought. But they were having a great time, which I'm surprised because it's so reliant on knowledge of not only the MCU, but also 20th Century Fox background, because pretty much the movie is a commentary on Disney's acquisition of 20th Century Fox and it being the end of that era. And pretty much they see Logan, the movie, as the end of that era, in a sense, which, by the way, doesn't sound like James Mangold was a fan of what they did with Logan, which I totally understand. Like, you made a movie where it's like an end, and now you carry on the torch. And so Daphne King was supposed to be like carrying on the torch, and it really didn't happen. And I think Ryan Reynolds is right. Hugh Jackman's going to be doing this till he's 90.
He's 90.
Especially this post-divorce, man. He needs that money.
Yeah, I definitely don't agree with the people who are like, well, now Logan was meaningless. It's like, no, it wasn't meaningless.
Not meaningless, yeah.
Well, for one thing, stories can just be standalone.
Yes.
It's the same fans who get mad when their continuity is ruined by some news show that they don't like. It's like, just don't watch it. It does not change your experience of watching what you liked. Logan's still its own story. It still had an ending.
Mm-hmm.
And if you want to get technical and picky about it, in universe, it also is still an ending. That Logan was not resurrected. That universe was not folded into Marvel. That still exists. It still happened. It still matters.
As much as Deadpool tried.
As much as Deadpool tried.
Dig up that Logan.
But yeah, I definitely see where the director is coming from.
Oh, as the director? Yes,
as the director, I definitely don't fault him for that.
As a lover of X-Men, especially Wolverine, yeah, I love Logan. It doesn't in any way tarnish my love for that movie. Because in my mind, and there's a smart of the movie, it is a different Wolverine.
Exactly.
And what's interesting, there was a moment when Cassandra Nova, which is the baddie of this movie, she is Professor X's twin sister. Pretty much She went straight to the void.
Right.
A timeline that never was. But she pretty much has the powers of Professor X. And she's even bald, so she has the same look. But when she goes into Logan's head, that's actually a really good scene. And part of me is like, oh, I kind of want this movie, though. I want, like, almost evil Professor X collecting her X-Men in this, like, really manipulative way. Because it almost seemed like she was trying to, like, get him on her side. And to me, that was very interesting. And I'm like, oh, man, I wouldn't mind this movie. Like a dark X-Men. Because I could definitely see there's a few X-Men where they're just like on the line of being bad. They're right on the line. And Logan is a great example of that. And there's probably a few others where if she got into their head, she might have pushed them over the other side. And especially with her look and the way she acts, I thought that would be a really good movie. But of course, it's not going to happen. But, you know, you have those moments where you see something, I'm like, oh, I wish I had that movie.
If only What If didn't suck, then they could tackle this.
Yes.
We talked about that already in our last episode, X-Men 97. Look it up wherever you get your podcasts. Yeah, going back to some of the smart decisions the movie made, I thought what really surprised me was how well they actually tied in the joke of the multiverse and digging things up with the meta context surrounding the movie and the Fox acquisition, and tying that into Deadpool's story and all the cameos they brought in, tying those stories together into something that was actually pretty compelling in a way that I didn't expect. I was expecting a point and clap sort of movie, and it was, but in the way you should be doing it, where it's not a point and clap for the sake of point and clap. It ties into the movie thematically. It ties into the movie plot.
Yeah.
Ties into the characters, the main characters' arcs, all of it. So some very smart choices there to make those point claps actually mean something. To the point that this silly, stupid Deadpool movie that's just making fun of everything ends up doing the multiverse in the point and clap movie better than almost any other version of this I've seen.
Yeah, it's crazy that they just started the multiverse and I'm over it.
Yes.
It's so quickly. Just because it's so uninspired, a lot of things that they're doing. I'm like, you literally have everything at your disposal, and a lack of creativity.
Sometimes unlimited possibilities leads from very limited creativity because you always take the easiest paths.
Yes.
And the easiest paths aren't always the most interesting.
And we've definitely seen that.
Yeah. So which is why I thought I would not like the movie. So I'm like, okay, this is going to be multiverse stuff, point and clap. Okay, yeah, I get it. But it took everything I didn't like, made it work to the point that I don't actually even want to see this done anymore. I'm like, oh, game over.
Can we stop?
These guys did it.
Can we
These guys did it. They did it the way it was supposed to be. It really can't be replicated like this because Deadpool's so unique. Okay, everybody else, you can stop now. We don't have to do this anymore. It's done. Multiverse over. That's not how it's going to be.
Oh, no. Not with Robert Downey Jr. coming in back in, baby.
Till you're 90.
Till you're 90. Yeah, good thing that this movie made a lot of money because all the money is going to be in a dump truck. They're going to dump it into his yard.
Well, first it's got to go to all the cameos they paid for this one, which is why the rest of it looks so cheap because they probably had absolutely nothing left in the budget for anything else.
That's my joke. I'm like, it was because of all these cameos is why this movie looks like shit.
Yeah, so let's talk about that. So on the negative side, despite the structure working, at least for me, the jokes working, it tying all the stuff together, when you look at it, it is still a very Marvel movie.
Oh, yeah.
It still has these sort of flat, dry, green screen looking studio sets. The budget did not go to any of this stuff.
No, it went to all the actors.
Somebody said, oh, it adds to the charm, but I don't feel like something coming from Marvel Studios is, in my opinion, incapable of charm. It's just, it's like rooting for the, what do you call it, the overdog? I don't know what's the opposite.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just,
Yeah, when
It's
I
like,
think
nah,
of Marvel, I do not think of charm.
when you're throwing around this much money, none of that is charming. It just is.
Like, pay for good-looking movies. You have the money.
So I think it was less detrimental to this movie than other Marvel movies because that wasn't the purpose of it.
True.
It really was more the backdrop. You know, your typical Avengers movie or big main storyline Marvel movie is very much about those action set pieces and the look of it and making it look whatever they vomit onto the screen.
Yes.
And so when those start to get old and fall flat, they have nothing else going for them. And that's when you really start falling off. But this, thankfully it had more to it. That wasn't really the point of it. But I still couldn't help notice that, like, okay, this is still all the same Marvel stuff. This isn't exactly, it's not a turning point or anything. It's more of a distillation of the formula with a splash of Deadpool to make it the best version of the Marvel movie that you'll probably get, at least of this type.
I think when a movie doesn't look good, it's the excuse, like Sean Levy said, of, oh, this is a populist movie. And I'm like, I feel like you're kind of telling on yourself that you can't make a good-looking, entertaining movie. Like, you can't do both. Where we say we can have both. And we've said this before, like with monster movies. I don't understand why, if a movie is quote-unquote populist, it can't also look great and have a little sharper script, better directing. I feel like that populist thing is an excuse, like
to be lazy.
Because
they don't have to.
Yeah.
Clearly, this movie didn't have to. It was still very successful.
Yeah, it's just, I think that's probably some of the reason why I was feeling the drag by the end, because of these elements that felt so lazy to me. So I think those are probably the two big negative aspects for me. One, shorten it. We need to shorten it. And two, put a little bit more care in those details. Just, even if it looked this much better, I think it would have helped so much. I get this is probably just a churn and burn for him. Like he's getting it done and moving on to the next. I don't know. I just don't feel the care when you don't look to those details.
Yeah, it definitely didn't get me back on the Marvel train or anything. Because I saw that it was still basically Marvel under the hood. What I did like about this movie, it made me almost more comfortable with ditching the Marvel universe after this point. Like, oh, now that this is out, I truly have nothing else.
Oh, I'm good
to gain from this. Which I already had felt that way after Infinity War and Endgame. I liked those movies. I thought they were a really great conclusion to the arc, and I was very much, there's really nothing more I can get out of this. Then this came out, which did surprise me, so I guess it's not impossible that there will never be something I can get out of it. But this is very different from Infinity War and Endgame. It captures all of my frustrations with the Marvel direction post Endgame in a cathartic sort of way.
Okay, I could see that.
Of making, that almost made it more appealing to me. The fact that I was so disconnected made this more appealing to me because it poked fun and trashed all of those things, showed how to do it, and then just mic dropped and walked off. And so now I feel even more complete. It's like, yeah, I have Endgame, I have Infinity War, and I have this. Now I really don't have anything to get up from Marvel after this point, because there's no way they can't replicate this.
No.
They're gonna try and apply it to other movies, and it's not gonna work because Deadpool's too unique.
But yeah, after Endgame and Infinity War, I feel like as time goes on, the less invested I am, and I'm just more detached. So that's probably part of the reason why I was kind of like over it by the end. Because yeah, they're making fun of themselves, but still Disney, so it
can only go so far. Yeah, it's still the call's still coming from inside the house.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Do we want to get into cameos?
Yeah, so let's talk spoilers. So spoiler warning. Run across the room and turn off the podcast real quick before we ruin everything. I would say before we get into spoilers, if you're on the fence, again, if you're at all a Deadpool fan, I think it is worth seeing.
Mm-hmm.
especially if it has not been spoiled for you yet.
Oh, yeah, definitely go if it hasn't been spoiled.
Even if I never watch this again, I'm glad I saw it. I'm glad I went into it with nothing spoiled because it really made it work, at least in the moment. And so it's an experience that I'm happy I got. And so I would encourage you to do the same. If you're at all interested, go see it. Do not get it spoiled, because if it's spoiled, I think it's going to fall completely flat. They always talk about, oh, you got to see it without spoilers, but I think this one really, this is actually true.
Now, I knew about a couple of the cameos, but I'm thankful I did not know about my favorite one.
Yeah, so spoiler.
Spoilers.
I'm going to give you a warning. I know what it is, but go ahead.
This is where I became alive in the movie, because I was starting to feel a little bit of the fatigue, but when this happened, it rejuvenated me for a good 30 minutes. And it is Channing Tatum coming out as Gambit.
I
couldn't believe it. I loved it so much. And I'm like, they got me!
Very cool. Just when I thought I was out, they pulled me back in.
Those motherfuckers got me.
Yeah, up until that point, it was like, it's pretty much like, oh, yes, all these cameos. People are so susceptible to playing, oh my fucking God, it's Channing Tatum cameo.
I know. I want to come off as the elitist, like,
yes,
oh,
I'm too good for, oh my God, he's talking in a terrible Creole accent.
Oh, beautiful. That accent, mwah, loved it.
No notes.
No notes. I couldn't believe we got that.
And that's a deep cut. You have to be deep.
My mom asked me about it. She's like, what was going on with that?
Yeah,
that's one of the things I had to explain to her. I'm like, you don't understand, Mom. You don't understand.
What we were denied. And seeing it, I think it was a good idea that we didn't get it, but I'm glad we got it for this little bit.
Exactly. It's one of those, yeah, if it was in just a regular movie, it would have been...
It probably wouldn't have worked.
But because it's in Deadpool, it worked.
Deadpool makes things work that shouldn't work. Yeah, I know. And the other cameos were good too. I mean, Elektra, Blade,
Wesley Snipes, baby. And
I thought he was on point.
And he had a great line when he's like, the only Blade, baby. The look.
There'll never be another Blade.
Another Blade. And the look Deadpool gives to the audience. I'm like, that's a great joke. That is top notch right there. Oh, that's probably I'm hoping one major positive we get from this movie is that the next Blade movie will be R. Because guess what, Disney?
It works.
R-rated movies can make money.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. No, but yeah. So Wesley Snipes
is great.
Not only does he still got it, I feel like he put more energy into this than actual Blade sometimes. But yeah, so I thought he did a great job.
I did too. I was pleased to see him. I'm pretty sure he's retired. Man, again, they must have
so much money.
So much money. So much money to these people. So one of the cameos is interesting. I knew this actor was in the movie, but I didn't know who he was playing because I knew Chris Evans.
Yes.
But in my mind, I was thinking Captain America.
Uh-huh.
So when he was all covered up, there's like a second before it revealed it was actually Human Torch. I was like, I think I was hitting you, like, it's the Human Torch.
Yeah, and I think it would have been even more obvious if it took me a while to clock all the old Fox X-Men too.
Yeah, it was interesting because it was one of the first things, so your mind was not completely in the 20th century Fox mindset. So you're still kind of more in MCU. So of course you see Chris Evans, you think Captain America, but all those real ones, where he really started.
Yep. That was a genius little twist.
I have to give it to him. Great reveal.
Yep. It really was great seeing all the Fox X-Men. You got Pyro.
Mm-hmm.
Toad.
Toad, yes.
Sabretooth, Juggernaut.
Yeah, they got a lot of people
who did not matter whatsoever and you never cared about before, but now
you know what, they got a sweet check.
Yeah, got a sweet check. And again, going along with the theme of the movie, they all get a better ending than they might have had normally. They get to do one last thing, so in that sense it was kind of sweet, especially with Elektra and Blade and And X-23, like, Blade probably less than the other one since he did get a few movies, but, giving them this one last hurrah before sunsetting them. I guess we assume they're sunsetting them. Maybe some of them are also stuck till they're 90. But it was a nice feeling. I'm glad they did that. I'm glad they didn't make them a joke.
Yes, and I liked it for most of them. I'm still a little sad about X-23. I'm like, she shouldn't be there. She should be in her own team up stuff. You know what I mean? They dropped the ball with her because I thought she had a nice setup to continue on. So it did make me a little sad seeing her there, like
after with Fox.
Yeah, that was a little disappointing in that she deserved better. Where, let's be honest, some of these people are right where they need to be.
Sure, yeah. Well, I mean, X-23 was the only one who we saw anyway, like, make it out. She's at the party at the end.
Oh, who was at the party?
I think all we saw Wolverine and X-23, but you didn't see Elektra there or Blade or...
Really? Okay.
Yeah, but X-23 was there.
Okay, that makes me a little happy that they might actually want to incorporate her in future movies.
Yeah.
Along with Hugh Jackman.
Oh yeah, either it probably for them it just leaves the door open, right? Like they could use her, or if they don't, at least you get to see she's with Wolverine. Like it's almost a weird sort of happy ending. Even if it ended right there, it's at least a happy ending for her character. Like her Wolverine died, now she has a new one,
a new daddy. There is one nerd thing that really got to me. It wasn't a cameo. It's not just Wolverine's suit, but when he puts on the mask.
The mask.
Oh my goodness. I'm such a nerd.
And all its ridiculousness.
That really got to me. I don't know, like the way his eyes are moving too, kind of like similar
to
the
Deadpool treatment, yeah.
For some reason, that was probably the highlight in the third act. For me, that was it. It was carrying me.
The highlight of the third act wasn't when his outfit burns up.
Now, that Madonna song was okay, but I do have a bone to pick with needle drops of popular pop songs and movies. That
was this entire soundtrack.
It's ridiculous. It is too much.
There's illumination level of needle drops.
Exactly. It started... I remember the first time I noticed how egregious it was in movies, and I just audibly groaned. It was in It Chapter 2, where one of the adults goes down to a basement and he's confronted by his fear of a zombie, like disease-infested zombie coming after him.
They didn't play zombie, but did they?
I'm glad you weren't in the writer's room. That would have done.
Did I just put a curse upon someone somewhere?
Don't say that. Don't say that. They'll edit it into it somehow. And so a zombie vomits on him. And when that happens, they needle drop the angel song. Just call me angel.
Oh, yeah.
Like, nothing to do with anything. I audibly groaned in the theater. I'm like, this is awful. And ever since then, I feel like it's gotten worse and I'm more sensitive to it.
It's gotten worse because it's been more successful.
Oh, no.
It makes the money.
Yeah, that's also where all the money went in this movie, was all those tracks. Yep. Madonna also got a huge paycheck from Disney.
And again, like, okay, it's Deadpool, so it does work for Deadpool, but now are they going to, the lesson from that being, do it on everything else?
Some of them didn't work in this movie for me. I think only...
Even for Deadpool, some of them were a bit egregious.
A lot. They probably could have kept to the NSYNC song in the beginning, and the Madonna, like, when they're holding hands, and that would have been perfect. That would have been enough. But nice, there was also, bookends. I can't remember, there's like 2 or 3 songs that they dropped throughout, and I'm just like, no more.
Yeah. And that's the thing is, with Marvel, you have James Gunn, who is basically the king of needle drops.
And he does it great.
He does it great, and doesn't just do popular music. Like, if you want to see the worst example, you go to any Illumination movie. They just drop any remotely popular 80s or 90s song, call it a day. If it has some word in there that lines up, great. But, that's very different from someone like James Gunn, who has, like, taste, or at least like a viewpoint of music.
Yes.
So you can tell it's like it's all coming through with his, like, oh, this is someone who is a fan of music and is putting in stuff he likes that fits.
And he did a great job of making sure to have that awesome mix, Volume 1. So it made sense because these are songs that Peter's mom
Right.
loved and gave to him.
Right.
So that also has another emotional layer to it. And nowadays, there's just no emotional layer with music because sound and music are just as important in movies and how they tell stories. So I just had to say my piece because I've noticed over the years it's just getting worse and worse.
Speaking of the third act, I did appreciate that it did not end with. I'm always a fan of third acts that don't end with an actual fight or a laser. This one was kind of a laser beam, but it sort of went through them. But they end with more of a decision, a choice, rather than a coin toss of who will win. And so I appreciate that in the third act, that the ending, they did their cool Deadpool fight.
Yeah.
Which was good. I liked that. I liked the one take. I liked that. And then I liked that they sort of set them aside. Like, okay, now we're done with that.
Mm-hmm.
The climax is how has both of their journeys throughout this movie affected them in a way that will make this final decision.
Yes, because they're both seeking redemption.
Mm-hmm.
And so both see it in making the sacrifice, but only one needs to make it.
Very reminiscent of the Endgame with Natasha. And
I know. Oh, yes, with Hawkeye and Natasha.
Fighting over who's going to sacrifice themselves. No me.
That was definitely the vibe of the end. And so I kind of like where it landed. Yeah, probably everything with them, like, actually in that, what would you call it? The
wire closet?
Wire closet? No, basement wire closet. Whatever it is, in that room, that was probably some of the best stuff of the third act. I did like that. Yeah, and sadly, there's just some things where Disney's being Disney, where they're afraid to be too gay. And you can feel it. You can feel it there. They're like, I feel like you hit a wall. Like, you get to a certain point, and they're like, it's okay to have jokes about being gay, but you can't actually be gay.
Right.
Which, that to me is probably the biggest bummer of Deadpool being a part of both Fox and Disney, because Deadpool's pansexual. You have an open relationship, let's be honest. Like, this whole, like, close relationship, I don't see it for Deadpool or her. And so that to me felt you could just feel like the conservativeness of the companies coming in. We
can show people being dismembered from their anus, but not any of this gay stuff.
And they can make jokes about anal sex and all that stuff, but he could actually have sex with men.
Right. Yeah.
Which I just always found that weird. Like, it's so weird that it's R, but also feels sanitized
in a very specific American way.
Yes, a very specific American way. And that's why some of the jokes didn't land for me, because it also felt more edgelord type humor of, we just say dirty stuff, but it actually is not.
Yeah, not all the jokes landed the way I felt like they intended.
Some were great. Mm-hmm. Some hit very well, and then some did not. And I was like, whew.
I guess, yeah, it's sort of a conundrum of a movie to me.
Very much so. I feel the same way.
Probably not helped by the fact that we're doing it on the podcast and therefore are forced to, like, analyze it. I feel like it's not something that's meant to be analyzed, which is probably fine. You can have different kinds of entertainment and different kinds of movies. To me, this feels like very much a one and done. I saw it in the theater with a crowd. Mm-hmm. I got the experience. I got the surprises. And now it's done and gets shoveled away. I might still try and see it again. Okay. There's an opportunity I have to see it for free, which might be the best way to see it again.
Yes.
And then I could
probably get gauge better.
Yeah,
like the longevity of how this might sit with you. Because yes, definitely the first viewing can be very different from how you'll actually feel once you're out of that first viewing environment. Yeah, so I'm interested to hear what you think after you see it a second time. I don't see myself watching again. Like I said, maybe that one hunk in the middle I really like. I could see sitting down and watching. Yeah.
Maybe if the rest of it wasn't as cheap. And here's where that also comes into play. So you have these great reveals with the cameo characters, especially Blade, Elektra, and Gambit, our boy.
Our boy.
And they get a chance to do some fighting. But especially having just seen X-Men 97, the vast expanse between what you're able to show in the animated format with their powers and what you're able to show in live action, especially on, I guess, a limited budget, was so apparent. And as cool as seeing Gambit was, I mean, he's not doing much.
Nope.
Flicking some stuff around, does boom, does little booms,
Yeah, he's not lighting up like a staff and like and exploding.
Yeah, it's
stuff like that.
It was and this is a problem with that all the live action has. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's lack of imagination, if it's lack of money. I mean, I guess you could just make them fully CGI and then they can do more stuff. There's got to be some way of doing it without just making them little CGI rubber dolls flopping around all over the place, to still showcase their powers in a way that's creative and has some oomph to it. Because ultimately what all three of them looked like, it was still just punching with extra steps. You know, they didn't really do anything beyond just these powers make them slightly better at hand-to-hand combat. It's like, okay, the other Gambit blew up a giant Mecha Godzilla. I don't see this guy doing that.
Man, if Sentinels come to town, we're in trouble.
And not just the expanse of their powers, but also in X-Men 97, seeing them, how they work together with each other and how their powers they
didn't feel
build off of each other. It's very much just individual people doing individual choreography with some very low, with some very fast shutter speed and shaky cam to make it sort of look dramatic. But ultimately, it was just two groups of people line up. They then run at each other, and they then do some punching with some little flashes thrown in.
Yep.
I don't think there's much there, and so that made me a little disappointed to see that they still really hadn't cracked the code. Maybe they will more so in future movies. Again, these characters were kind of just a side plot of a joke of a meta thing, and clearly all the budget went to all these fucking cameos.
Watching X-Men 97 before this probably hurt a little bit of my experience. Yeah. I did like the van fight, and I'm glad we got that, because the first fight they had, I did not like. Especially talking about CG rubber doll man, like when he goes to the ground, like Wolverine goes to the ground and running. Yeah. I was like, nightmare.
Yeah, I tried.
And so,
okay, so I'm pretty sure I saw a TikTok video of a girl running around on all fours, and that probably looked more convincing.
So after that, that really disappointed me. So I'm glad we had that van fight, because I'm like, man, I hope this is not like the Wolverine and Deadpool fight, because this is very disappointing. We will always have the Odyssey.
Yes. That's what you call a smart creative decision of, we're constrained in budget. How do we work around that? Oh, you make this really fun little, let's base a whole fight in a minivan. Not, well, let's just fight in a gravel pit.
And that's probably why
Kenobi style.
Yeah. That's probably why I loved it so much. I can feel the love of like constructing this also between the two actors, because that seemed very difficult. Some of those close up moves that they have to do towards each other, and all just the blood spraying everywhere. That was definitely a highlight, and I'm glad we had that moment. This is definitely a mixed bag of a movie for me. Didn't love it. Didn't think it was the end of cinema. All right. Any last thoughts?
No, I think that's it.
I'm looking through my notes. I actually think I covered everything, so yay! Yep, so Jonathan and I got vacay coming up, so I have no idea what we're going to do next. I think it's a bonus episode where I'm finally making Jonathan watch Challengers, and I Saw the TV Glow. I believe that's our next episode.
I think so, yeah.
And hopefully I'll get to watch Trap at some point.
Yeah, Trap was supposed to be on this episode.
But I'm
didn't work out.
A little under the weather. All right, so we'll see you next time.
See you later.
Bye.
Bye.